Welcome to Storytime. I'm Chris Horner, and in this edition, I want to talk about the Giro d'Italia. Tomorrow starts the 2023 Giro d'Italia, so I want to rewind the film and go all the way back to 2009 Giro and tell you guys my experiences of racing there in Italy. Now, in 2009 season, I'd had kind of a miserable season, a very painful season, and then a very spectacular season too, because at that year's edition of the Giro d'Italia, I was riding up in the top 10. I was finishing each of the mountain stages in the front group, and I was flying on spectacular form. So I want to go back and give you guys a little bit of what I was experiencing in 2009 at the Giro d'Italia. Now, before we get to the Giro, I got to explain a couple other races real fast before that so you can understand that when stage 10 finished of the 2009 Giro d'Italia, why I was so disappointed. Now, we hear riders all the time talk about how you can train for 3 months solid and then all of a sudden lose it all in one split moment, and that's what happened at that year's 2009 Giro d'Italia for me, but it was happening throughout the whole season. Season started off, we're doing Tour of California. Early in this race, in the earlier stages, I'd crashed, bumped my knee after I'd overlapped with my teammate Yanni Brakovic. And when I did that, I had some deep knee bruising there in the bones, and it caused an immense amount of pain. Now, I had to go through that Tour of California and finish out because we needed to win there, and you needed every rider to be solid so that we could take the general classification victory with Levi Leipheimer. So I suffered every day on massive dosage of tramadol to get through that Tour of California. And every day I kept getting worse and worse and worse. Then when I finished Tour of California, went and did some MRIs and saw that there was deep knee bruising. So I took a couple weeks off the bike, and during that time, I started to really focus on my diet and eating. Now, with that in mind, I got a bit thinner when the Basque Country started, and that was at one of my best racing weights to that point in time in my career. Went to the Basque Country on flying form, covering attacks from the best riders in the world, riding in support of Alberto Contador, who went on to win that year's 2009 Basque Country. But when stage 4 started, as we're attacking, going up the climbs, and I'm following all the tacks, bringing things back for Alberto Contador left and right, we go over the top of the climb early in that stage 4, and my teammate, Danny Navarro, he ends up breaking the chain or slips the chain because we had new chains put on and they weren't really quite tested yet. It was early in the development of the SRAM chains back in the day and had an issue, and one of the chains ended up breaking. He crashed, I crashed into him, went under the guardrail and broke my collarbone. Now I'm at the US, I'm trying to recover, get ready for Giro d'Italia in 2009. Before we start that event though, we end up going over to do Tour of Gila. Now, Tour of Gila, we did it with myself, Levi Leipheimer, and we did it with Lance Armstrong. With that in mind, we had 2 houses for 3 riders. We had staff all over the place, more staff than riders, and we had Johan Bernil as our director sportif at Tour of Gila. It was pretty interesting Tour of Gila to tell you the truth. And when we did the Criterium Day, it was packed all along the course there in Silver City, New Mexico, because everybody wanted to watch Lance Armstrong. Now, we won the overall classification there at Tour of Gila with Levi Leipheimer, and every day I was wearing a button-up shirt because I still had a broken collarbone that was healing from the Basque Country. We're starting to get on some very, very good form at the Tour of Gila, but we had some other problems going on before we got to the Giro d'Italia because with Team Astana, the Kazakhstan sponsors, none of them had paid us. So we were going 2 months into not getting paid before the Giro d'Italia started in 2009. And it was becoming about 3 months into it once the Giro started proper. And so Johan Bernil come up with the scheme that we were going to blank out all the jerseys. So if you get into the 2009 Giro d'Italia, and from the helicopter angles, if they're looking down on the jerseys and you can't read that it said Astana, that was because we weren't paid for 3 months' time. So there at the Giro d'Italia, once we got a couple stages into it, we changed all the jerseys and we went with blank jerseys with the exception of some of the sponsors who have paid. But like I said, all the Kazakhstani sponsors, they had never paid up. So the jerseys were going super light so you couldn't tell from the camera angle that we were actually Team Astana other than from the color of the jersey. Now, shortly after that, they paid us throughout that Giro d'Italia. But when we left Tour of Gila, I wanted to take it from that moment and carry it a little bit further to the Giro d'Italia because after we won the general classification at Tour of Gila with just 3 riders, we had a couple little help from other teams here and there on certain stages. But in general, we did the bulk of the work with myself riding early, then Lance Armstrong looking after Levi Leipheimer as they came into the final of the mountain stages, then Levi wrapped up the overall. Now, I flew in economy to fly over to the Torre Gila, and we were flying out of Torre Gila at a private airport there about probably 30-40 minutes outside of Silver City. Once we got to the airport, we loaded everything up, flew over to Denver, jumped off the private airport there and landed in Denver, jumped over to United, popped onto the airplane, rode first class all the way over to the Giro d'Italia. Now, once we get to the Giro d'Italia, I'd never done it before. I've experienced the Tour de France and, of course, the Tour of Spain before the Giro d'Italia, but this was my first edition at the 2009 Giro. We started off with a team time trial. Team went pretty solid through stage 1. I think we finished third, if I remember correctly, on the team classification there. Then once we started getting into the mountain stages, I realized the form started getting better and better and better and started coming really nice. Now, at the beginning of the Giro d'Italia, I was still putting on a button-up shirts because I couldn't actually lift my arm all the way up to put a t-shirt on because the collarbone was still just healing up. Once we got a few stages into it, though, the collarbone started becoming completely more solid, and I was able to start wearing some t-shirts. Once we start getting into stage 2 and 3, those were the sprinter stages that Alessandro Patacchi won, stages 2 and 3, and then we start getting into stage 4, and this is when I start realizing that the form is coming on something exceptional. We get into stage 5, and Ivan Basso was lighting up the field, doing most of the work on the final climb, setting tempo up there, and then it's just Levi Leipheimer and myself in the last group, and I'm looking after Levi as we're coming into the finish. The Giro had spectacular stage finishes when it would come into these sprint stages early in the week, as no matter how empty and barren the road would be further out from the finish, once we got into the towns, they would always have us zigzagging through all kinds of crazy neighborhoods and field obstacles all over, furniture on the street, and every place imaginable. We're coming into finishes that could have just come straight down in the finish, but instead they'd take us around the town and we'd just be battling out for position. It was stressful pretty much every day of the Giro d'Italia, unless you were going to have a summit finish or something that took you straight uphill. I remember one stage in particular, right around stage 7, 8 stage, I believe it was possibly the stage that Edvard Boasson won, and we were up on a plateau throughout most of the stage, and we had to drop down this gnarly, crazy switchback descents all the way to the finish, and it had been raining. Now we're dropping down the descent. Everyone knows this descent's coming up, and so I'm battling to be at the front because there's no way I want to do the descent in the back when you're going down such crazy 180 hairpin turns. So I'm up there battling with Ivan Basso for position, and his whole team's up front there looking after him as we're coming in down the descent. I'm battling all the time, and finally once we get about halfway down the descent, it starts to string out enough to where I can slot behind the teams that want to work in the front. And we're going down the descent into one of those crazy dark tunnels. Now in Italy, they don't like the tunnels if they're half open. And there's one of those snow tops that comes over there, and so it's all dark. It's all walled off here from the mountainside. Then you have the pillars here holding up the roof of the tunnel, and it's opened up here. Problem is, it had been raining like crazy, so once you got into there, it's already dark outside. There's no lights in the tunnel. I'm wearing dark sunglasses. They're all dirty from the rain, and I've been scared the whole descent. This is one of those crazy descents that we really don't experience much in the U.S., but over in Europe, they're pretty common when we're talking about 20 and 30 kilometer descents or climbs, and we're going down this one fast. We get into this crazy tunnel, and it's dark. I can't see anything. I'm probably about 15th position from the front, and I start getting a little scared, so I start backing off of the wheel in front of me. I start backing off, and we're doing 100 kilometers an hour, so 60 plus miles an hour through this tunnel, and you have zero brakes at this moment, guys. This is not the period in time where you have disc brakes. The brakes that we had on our bikes had no stopping power in the rain whatsoever. Basically, when you first hit them, it took 2-3 seconds for the rims to start to dry. Then they would start to work and probably lock up on you because you were squeezing them so hard from the first 2 seconds. So as I'm backing up off the wheel there, I'm thinking I got to get a little more space, And I look down at the computer and realize we're doing 100 kilometers an hour. Now at this point in time, I realized that there's nothing you could do if they start crashing. I could be 20 bike lengths back there. It's not going to make a difference. So I just let off the brakes, scoot all the way back up to the front. And now, like I said, we're over 60 kilometers an hour. We come out of this tunnel. Luckily, there's no crashes, but through my head the whole time, I'm just picturing crashing at 60 miles an hour and sliding all the way across and going into the hillside there of the concrete mountain side there to the right as we're going into a left turn bend like this through that tunnel the whole time at 60 miles an hour on wet roads, dark roads, and I can't see anything with my glasses and my brakes don't work. We come out of the tunnel and Yaroslav Popovich, he comes up to me and he wants to see if I need anything or if I got to give him a rain jacket. And as he's up there, he passes me and he starts yelling at me in his accent there, and he's, Chris, do you need anything? No, I don't. I'm good. And he looks back. He's taking his jacket off and basically taking his jacket off like he's got a bath towel, like he's drying his back or something, while he's looking backwards at me like this. And he's going, Chris, you sure you don't need anything? And I'm yelling at him, I just need you to put your hands on your bars, please, man, so we don't crash. So the whole time we're coming down this descent, I'm scared crazy down this descent. Here's Popovich in the rain, in the dark, and taking his rain jacket off. Looks like he just got out of a nice warm shower as I'm freaking out back there. Oh, he gets his hands back on the bars. We're all good to go. We finish the stage off. Now we get into the Bergamo stage, right around stage 7 or 8, I believe it was. And as we're coming into Bergamo, this stage is a little bit hilly. It's got some lumps all over the places. And I'm in this final split. We're about 15 guys that have broken off from the peloton behind. And I'm realizing at this point in time, as I'm just drilling it on the front, because Levi Leipheimer made this group with me, and I'm just pulling as hard as I possibly can. And I realize at this moment, I got some magical form, and this Giro d'Italia is going to go fantastic if you don't get crashed by all the chaos that's going on. Well, we get finally backed off the throttle as nobody else was willing to work much with me, and we back off, get caught, we come into the finish. And then all of a sudden we start getting into Milan stage, which is stage 9. And this stage is total chaos racing through Milan as there's just spectators everywhere, but the roads narrow, twisty, small European roads right through the center of Milan, and cars parked on the side left and right. Railroad tracks we got to go across. It's an insane stage, and all of the riders protest, and they end up kind of like neutralizing the stage. They do let the sprinters go for the stage win, and if I remember correctly, it was Mark Cavendish that ends up winning that stage into Milan. And as we're leaving and we're turning around, we're heading back to the team bus. Now I cross this finish line a little bit after the team, and once I turned around and started coming back, after seeing the soigneurs afterwards and getting my snacks and stuff, I'm heading back to the team bus. And there's people all over the course that are running in the opposite direction that the course finished in. Now, as they're running, I'm trying to just get back to my team bus, and I'm sitting there weaving my way through all these fans, and I'm just wondering, what is going on here? Why are all these fans so insane, and they're running all over the place? It was like a bomb had gone off in the city center there, and everybody was just running to get out of there. Well, as I'm dodging my way through all the fans and stuff, I start coming up to my team bus, and I realize what's going on. All of the fans here at the 2009 Giro d'Italia that watched this stage finish in Milan were now running over to the Stana bus because they all wanted the signature from Lance Armstrong. So I was dodging all these fans and yelling and screaming at them because they're all in the middle of the road. And just to realize, well, they're all running to my bus anyways for a signature. Get in the bus, jump in there, and now we're going to start stage 10. Now, at this point in time, this has been my best Grand Tour at this Giro d'Italia that I've ever had. And so as I'm going into stage 10, this is going to be a long stage, about 200 kilometers. And early in the stage, we're dropping down a descent. It's real fast, single file line. And I end up not sliding off the course, but there's some crashes. And so I have to steer off course into the dirt. And I'm going super fast. As I get on the brakes, I'm going straight left off to the side of the road. And I go straight into the hillside. Now, I don't crash. I just hit the hillside so hard that it yanks something with my foot and my leg on my left pedal there, pull it up. But the pedals didn't actually let go of the shoe. As I get off my bike and turn to run and jump back on the street, I realize something in the leg is hurting. Then I jump on the bike and realize I can't actually pedal the bike because the left leg is in so much pain. I keep coasting down the descent, hoping that I could get back up to the front group. And as I am, the peloton's just flying by me. Just guys are going by the whole time. And they're all kind of yelling like, get out of the way, get out of the way. And there's nothing I can do, right? I can't pedal the bike. The leg's not working. So I get down to the bottom of the hill, and luckily I had one teammate there, Andre Zeitz, who's the last guy in the peloton, and he sees me and he sits off the back of the group and he grabs me. And then I start pedaling a little bit and the leg loosens up just a little bit. And as it's loosening up, I'm starting to get back into it, and Andre Zeitz gets me back onto the back of the group. Now, at this point in time, I'm sitting 8th on the general classification, about a minute and 25 seconds back from the race leader. So I'm in solid GC position, and we have Levi Leipheimer, I believe, who was put in the top 5 on the general classification when we're talking about this stage 10. Now, as I get back onto the back of the peloton, again, I'd had a ton of accidents throughout this season with that Tour of California experience. And then I'd also crashed at the Tour of the Basque Country on stage 4, as I told you. So now here at stage 10, I realize there's something wrong with the leg and it's incredibly painful. So I'm experienced enough at this point in time to know to go back to the team car where we have the doctor. They call up the second team car, and the doctor's in there, and he's going to give me a bunch of tramadol to try to get the pain to release from the legs, and so I could at least finish out the stage, and then we can figure out what's going on later after the stage. As the doctor gives me the painkillers, it helps a little bit, but doesn't take away enough of the pain to really be able to help my stage 10 here. So once we get into the final of the mountain stages, once they started attacking on the smaller climbs to the finish, I ended up getting popped, and I lost about a minute and 50 seconds on that stage, but still was solid on the general classification and still riding good in general. But the next morning when I wake up, I go to get out of bed, step out of bed, and once I do, the leg just collapses. Now, I tell the team doctor and stuff, I go, I can't get out of bed. Can you come to the room? And he comes, checks out the leg. And we figure out that the leg must be broken with a small hairline fracture in just between the ankle and the knee, right there in the center of the left leg in front, where later I realized with the MRI that the muscle had actually pulled straight part of the bone up on the leg, so your tendons and muscle right here that are attached to the bone had lifted up part of the bone there, and that had caused a small little fracture in the leg, and that was all the pain that I was feeling at the Giro d'Italia. Now that season was a crazy season, and that Giro d'Italia experience, all the way from the team time trial on stage 1 through the mountain stages early in stage 4, and then later battling with Ivan Basso and all the other great riders at the Giro d'Italia, had taught me that at this point in time, if you could really control your diet, keep it under control, keep everything in your life focused, so all you're doing is riding your bike, dieting right, coming in thin, doing the correct training. If you can keep all that stuff organized like I did throughout this 2009 season, even with all these crashes, you could start riding at the top of your game with the best riders in the world. So when I left that year's Giro d'Italia, it was a downer in terms of I didn't get to go top 10 at a Grand Tour for the first time in my career, but it was a bit of a upper because I'd realized that here I am at Giro d'Italia riding with the best riders in the world. You just got to stay focused and keep everything in alignment so all the stars stay aligned if you want to be the best you can be at these bike races. Now, later in the season, it was a crazy season. I'll give you a short little thing and I'll round up this story here. But as we got later in the season, once of course we went to Tour de Land, I ended up going second on the general classification and wearing the race leader's jersey there, and then went to the Tour of Spain and crashed out of the Tour of Spain on stage 4. So throughout that season, I'd had like 6 different hard crashes throughout that season. 4 of them had broken bones and sent me back home. And then still at the end of the season, before the Vuelta a España started, Johan Bernal had offered me one of my best contracts I'd ever received. And it was about $425,000 if I remember correctly. And so I signed the contract before I went to the Tour of Spain, even knowing that I could have a really good Tour of Spain. But I also knew at the Tour of Spain you can crash out. So keep that in mind when you're watching all these Grand Tours, and especially when you're watching the Giro d'Italia. It's a crazy race. The weather's always a factor. It can be cold, it can be raining, it can be miserable, or it can be sunny and beautiful. There's always going to be some chaos on the roads because Italy is chaos on the roads. Different from racing from France, where the first week is really just about curb to curb and mass riders fighting. Italy's more about surviving the chaos between the weather and the crazy roads. And then Tour of Spain is more about riders facing off against each other with just their best form and not so many road obstacles or weather obstacles to deal with. So each one of the Grand Tours have something different to experience as a rider. And the Giro, I think, between the three is the craziest of all of them, because there's never a moment when you can really relax when the weather is changing every day, when the mountains are going up, down, when the roads are twisty, technical, wet, and miserable, and when the finishes are so chaotic as they like to pick at the Giro d'Italia. Now, hopefully this year's 2023 edition goes smoothly for the riders. We got a great battle, of course, with Remco Evenepoel and Primoz Roglic, if Jumbo-Visma can get Primoz Roglic to tomorrow's start, because they've been having all kinds of problems. But we should have a fantastic Giro d'Italia to look forward to in 2023. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition real soon.